channel, everybody. I'm here again with Dillon Lang, and this time we're going to talk with Godzilla Minus One. So I'm going to toss it to Dillon, first of all, because I know he's a big Godzilla fan, to give us a few overall comments before we dive into some of the things we liked or possibly didn't like about this movie. Dillon?
Um, like you said, hello. I am massive Godzilla fan. I've seen all, I think 38 if you count their like anime trilogy of movies that they did. Godzilla movies.
By that you mean the Toho Studios?
Yeah. So like it was kind of like their animation branch or something. The only like Godzilla thing that I haven't finished watching was their other anime, Singular Point. It's very science heavy and math heavy. You have characters just talking about math equations for like minutes at a time. It's a little out there. I kind of enjoy the character designs and everything. They brought back Jet Jaguar in that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so going into this, I was really excited because they basically announced it like a year before it came out. They announced it with the release date, and they're like, "Yeah, it's done. It's going to come out in November of next year." And all they had was like the footprint as their poster, which is what they did with Shin Godzilla last time. And I think there was rumblings that it was going to be a period piece set in post-war Japan, and I thought that was one of the coolest ideas they could possibly do right now, especially to differentiate it from the current legendary monsterverse. I feel like setting it in modern day, and even if it was a more kind of typical Godzilla movie, because like Shin Godzilla wasn't like a typical Godzilla movie. It's a very kind of it's a little out there because of how Hideki Anno approaches things. Whereas this is a bit more true to the tropes and spirit of Godzilla. But I was very excited. Went to see it, and I was absolutely blown away by it. It was probably my favorite or second favorite from last year, which is a little ironic because my favorite from last year was Oppenheimer for the longest time. So these kind of work as companion pieces in a way.
Yeah, sure.
And even in like tone, they work as companion pieces. This is a bit more of a kind of it's not like a horror movie, but like you feel for the characters much more in this than I feel like you do in most other Godzilla movies. And like there is just like a dread every time he shows up. Whenever he starts smashing buildings, you're not cheering for it. It looks great, but you're like horrified the whole time. And you're going, no, I don't want these characters to die. I like these characters.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really stood out is they really took time to have not just like paper characters, but people had a bit more depth to them.
Yeah. From the opening scene, I was really into it because it felt like a very Spielberg Jurassic Park-esque opening sequence of your main character, which I'm terrible with Japanese names, so I like remembering them specifically. So I'm probably not going to say any names here. But he's a kamikaze pilot, and he lands on that little island, the Oda Island, I think, and to get his plane checked because he said that there was some malfunction, and he was actually just lying because he doesn't want to sacrifice himself for his country. And during that sequence, a like unmutated version of Godzilla shows up and just wrecks everything. And that is like the start of this absolute like villain relationship with Godzilla, where it's like every time he's maybe starting to find something in life, Godzilla shows up and just wrecks it.
Well, I think that was a very like a unique way to want to tell a story. We're going to start the story off. We're going to show this character, and immediately we're going to show him failing at what he's been called to do. And everybody around knows he's lying, right? There's nothing really wrong with this plane.
Yeah.
He's clearly a coward. He's not going to go out and commit suicide. And the survivor's guilt, right, that he then copes with throughout the movie, and how he kind of goes from unwilling to sacrifice his life for sort of a sort of big kind of amorphous idea for my country, for the war effort for the emperor, whatever, to toward the end of the movie then becoming more willing to sacrifice his life for the people he knows and has come
Yeah.
to love, right? So it's like, it's not that he's so much cowardly as he didn't really have that, kind of like he had, why am I doing this? What do I want to kill myself for this for? But when there's something that's important to him, right, then suddenly it's like, maybe my life's worth it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
also don't recall ever seeing a movie set in post-war Tokyo. So we're seeing this bombed out city where people are sort of making these little shelters out of what they can find. He takes in this woman who's taken in a baby, right? It's not even her baby. She's just found this kid somewhere. She's trying to take care of it. He finds her. He tries to take care of her. And so people are starting to pull together and take care of each other, even if they're complete strangers. And the whole city is just sort of these like shacks of people searching for food and maybe looking for work and
Yeah.
trying to survive. And I don't recall seeing any movie like that. I was also surprised that it did so well because, I mean, a lot of people, Americans, don't want to go to see a movie you have to read.
Yeah.
It's like, if I can't,
And they didn't release a dub for it. It was all sub.
You're gonna have to read this movie. And so I'm like, oh well, I guess that's that. But no, I was pleasantly surprised that it did so well. And in fact, we weren't able to see it that first week it was out. We're like, we're only gonna leave it in the theaters for a week.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh crap, I'm not gonna be able to arrange to see this movie. We've got this other stuff to do. But then they're like, oh no, now it's doing so well, we'll keep it out for a while longer. And then we were able to see it.
Yeah. That was awesome. It was like the little engine that could. It just kept staying in, like the way that movies used to do the box office, where it was just like, oh, this is in demand, keep it. And the only reason it even got pulled from the American theaters was because of the impending release of Godzilla Cross Kong: The New Empire. There was some deal with Legendary where it was like, all right, you got to give us 3 months like space, basically. And I sort of understand it, because like, you don't want Godzilla competing with Godzilla. I feel like you risk a little bit of a franchise cannibalism there. Yeah. Which that one is also doing really well right now. I think people are just in the mood for big monsters or something. Dune's making money, and that has big sandworms.
Great sandworms. Yep.
Yeah. But they I love the success that this has found. And like you were saying, not to get a little too political here, but there hasn't really been a movie, at least popular in the West, about post-war Japan, and part of that has to do with the like strict censorship that Japan had been under for like decades, under kind of American occupation and stuff like that. Godzilla was a result of that censorship, because they were like, well, we can't make a movie about the horrors of the nuclear bomb, but we could maybe make a movie where possibly the monster was made because of nuclear bombs and he causes similar levels of destruction. That was the thought process to creating Godzilla, alongside I think there was a re-release of the original King Kong in Japan, and Ishiro Honda was like, oh, this is awesome, I want to make a monster movie.
Well, there's always some political things there at post-war Japan. I'm pretty sure I read something about the movies like this are not doing too well, or might possibly be censored in places like China or Korea, which suffered greatly under the Japanese, certainly prior to the war and during the war. So you can see why the Chinese and Koreans maybe don't want to watch this movie, or movies like this, or anything that shows Japan in a positive light. And that's just a historical reality that everyone's got to live with.
Yeah.
So I get that. And I'll throw in here just off topic, but I have not yet seen it. But I can't remember if it's Netflix or Amazon Prime. There's a show called The Nine-Tailed, which is about a nine-tailed fox, which is a folklore character in several um, Eastern folklores, and I first heard of it when I played D&D, and yeah. But if you're watching Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, when he goes to his mother's village, there's these nine-tailed foxes.
Yeah.
So they're called kumiho in Korea, and the first season is this kumiho who's been trying to find his true love. She died centuries ago, and he's been searching for her, reincarnated spirit. But season two, which I've not yet watched, is supposed to take place, I believe, either immediately pre-war, post-war Korea. Anyway, when the Japanese are maybe pre-war, because I think the Japanese have just taken over Korea, and so you're going to see a more historical time in Korean history that you wouldn't normally probably see.
That's
So I'm just going to
interesting.
toss it out there if you're interested in these kind of shows, but also history, you might want to try the Nine-Tailed and get through season two, which, as I said, I haven't done yet. But so here in this movie, we have post-war Tokyo, which I had not really seen.
Yeah.
So seeing these sort of historical sites that hadn't really been on the screen before was really kind of interesting. And then his whole character arc, because we're looking at characters that are more than one dimensional, and he's got this survivor's guilt, he's got this shame, and he's trying to come back from that, and but everyone else is trying to piece their lives back together too.
Yeah. And like it's just such a well realized vision of post war Japan too. It feels very real and lived in. It had a small budget, so I'm really impressed with what they were able to do in terms of period accuracy and monster action. I think it was made for somewhere between 10 and $15 million, which you compare that to Dune's 125 million budget, or Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania's $250 million budget, and it's like, I don't know what's going on in Hollywood, but over in Japan, there might be some labor issues in Japan. I'm aware of many in like the anime industry, but the budgets are at least at a point where the movies can be profitable. But yeah, I think the director is Yamazaki. He again just takes you to like a ground level of this time period and these characters, and it's like a compelling post-war drama, and then Godzilla shows up. I thought that was an interesting approach. That's a quality of like the Predator franchise that I've always enjoyed, was like the first two movies are these specific genre films like action or like cop procedural, and then the Predator shows up. And even the newest one, Prey, was like that. It's like this period piece following a Comanche Indian, and then the Predator shows up. And so this kind of felt like that philosophy of like, let's really try to build up everything else about this, and then Godzilla just is going to show up and wreck it.
Yeah, I think we did a very good job of that. And of course, we're getting back into kind of the original Godzilla who stomps on things, right?
Yeah.
So you're not getting a sympathetic monster here.
No. In fact, he's got a bit more personality to him than the Shin Godzilla did. But like, he's still kind of just a rage monster. We don't get like much of a tragic backstory or anything. There's some references to GMK, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, giant monsters all out attack. The main character wonders if Godzilla is like the manifestation of like lost souls torturing him, and in GMK, that is canonically what Godzilla is in that universe. Is he's like the lost souls of Hiroshima who feel like Japan has forgotten or isn't properly paying respect or something like that, and he shows up and starts attacking. But that one is a little bit more fun filled, where there's you got Mothra and King Ghidorah, and you also have, I think his name is Baragon, and they all kind of tussle a bit, and it's fun. This is, again, most action sequences in this are harrowing. The boat sequence is incredible. It is like a standout moment in this movie, and I feel like, on the one hand, I understand that why it took so long because of like budgetary and effects reasons, but like it feels insane that it took this long to get this kind of a sequence with Godzilla in the water, like chasing down a boat. You get a little bit of that in King of the Monsters, I guess, the 2019 one, whenever they wake him back up and he comes up out of the ocean. But in that, you're already sold on Godzilla being a good guy, whereas here it's like, oh, he's like hunting them. It was a very Jaws sequence. Again, a lot of this movie reminds me a bit of like Spielberg, just the way that the tension is done and everything. It definitely has its own unique identity to it, though. I want to say, again, I use Letterboxd a lot, and I want to say the first time I saw this, I mentioned, I basically described this as being like it reminding me of the reason why I love movies, because it has like everything I love about movies, where it's like it's got these great characters, it's got good drama to it. It's got a healthy amount of comedy. Like there's some comedic moments between the characters. It's not all just doom and gloom, but also those monster sequences are just some of the best made monster sequences out there right now.
I have seen a couple of negative things, as I mentioned Dylan before we started recording. I just this morning saw a review of it from last month, from March of 2024, on how it was the most dreadful movie. And but I also saw one several months ago about how they did not care for the ending. And I don't mind spoilers. I spoil things on this channel all the time. So, if you don't like them, I'm sorry, but we're going to spoil things. Toward the end of the movie, there's an opportunity for the main character to sacrifice his life for the people he loves. And he manages to succeed in his mission without sacrificing his life, right?
Yeah.
He manages both. He saves everyone and he lives. And I saw people like, no, that's not the way it should have gone. He was on this redemptive character arc, so he should have died.
But that ignores the whole movie's like politics of like the expectations that Japan had on the citizens and soldiers at that time were unhealthy and wrong. It ignores the like spiritual growth of the country. So
I'm just saying there are people who didn't like it.
Yeah.
And they give their reasons, whether you agree with them or not. But yeah, so it's not been 100% everyone loves it, but I think most people do, and that's why it was in those theaters much longer than it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it wasn't there quite long enough for me to get to see it twice. So I'm hoping that at some point they stream it or something, I get to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because it was very enjoyable. I did like King of the Monsters. I did not care for the 2 or 3 Godzilla movies before that. But of course, I love Ghidorah, and so Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is my favorite of all time.
Yeah.
Which is one of those little comfort movies where it's just so stupid and everything is in there, and princesses with amnesia and Martians and singing fairies and Mothra is a caterpillar. I mean, I just love every scene of that movie. But this one is much more serious and not silly. And I was kind of expecting that. I mean, it's a Godzilla movie. Like, oh, it's the best Godzilla movie ever made. I'm like, well, then I expect, some stomping monsters and kind of some cheesy whatever. And
yeah.
But maybe they just did a very good job, with the special effects or something. But no, like the whole thing was very quality with the characters and the direction and all of that. So it was great.
Yeah. If you, I'd be curious to see your thoughts on the new one. I know you said that you don't really like King Kong much as a character, but it definitely goes more for the goofy qualities of like the Showa era. There's like a whole underground kingdom of tribal native people that can like utilize a pyramid to turn gravity off and stuff.
Wow.
There's the villain of that movie is a big red ape who uses like a crystal to command another giant lizard monster who breathes ice and stuff. It goes really silly. It's not it's nowhere near as good as this, in my opinion. And it also uh, it has a lot of the same problems that every MonsterVerse movie has had, of just like the characters just aren't that good, and you especially feel that post 3 months after Godzilla minus one. You're like, oh man, remember when characters could be written really well and compelling? um, and here they're all just like expository machines or one liners. Um, but yeah, I had the opportunity to see this, once with a friend, once with my girlfriend, and then I saw it, in black and white, during its last week in theaters. They released the, Godzilla minus one minus color edit, which I think is an awesome title for that. And I think I prefer it in color still. Usually I do. I've given every like black and white edit of a film, a shot that I can find, because I adore just the aesthetics of black and white. There was
It's a certain kind of shooting, though. You've got the lighting's different and everything. If you want to shoot in black and white, if you're shooting in color, just remove the color, you lose all of that special quality of the light and everything you're going to have to do to make everything much more to stand out, and the contrasts and things.
Thankfully, this was not just like a simple like chroma key flip. They actually did put a ton of effort, where it was like each scene they had to like change the contrast for and stuff. Like they did a lot of effort in it. It is a good way to watch the movie. It does add a little bit more weight to it. Everything comes across as a bit more dire and serious in black and white. But I feel like it kind of misses some of the, there's some moments of beauty in the film, and I feel like it kind of misses that when the color is gone. But
the other thing we haven't really mentioned, it looks like clearly setting up a sequel. Because the woman he takes in, she disappears. You think she's dead during one of these Godzilla attacks, but she turns up later. She's only been like injured, and she's in a hospital. By the last scene, though, we see that something's happened to her. Right? We see some sort of weird something on her neck, like she's got a parasite in her bloodstream or something's going on. So clearly we're setting up, we need another story to be telling, I guess, her story and what happens to Godzilla and everyone after this movie.
Yeah. And I mean, Shin Godzilla sort of did that too, with a little bit of a cliffhanger, and that never got a follow up. So it could just be more of a, just like a cliffhanger ending. They might not necessarily be exploring a sequel, but it would be really awesome. I'd watch whatever they do next, like immediately, because of just how good this was. If I did have any complaints about the movie, it would be like the very last moment of the movie being, oh, she survived, because the destruction that we saw her go through, and then like the state that her body is in, where it's just like, yeah, she's got like a cast and like a thing over her eye, and she still has like her makeup done.
She has all four limbs, and
I was like,
crushed.
because it was, because Godzilla's atomic breath in this is awesome, and devastatingly powerful, where it's like just a nuclear bomb goes off wherever it lands, and like it sucks her away, like blasts her away, and then everything gets sucked back towards wherever the blast was. And I was like, yeah, no, she's like dead for real. And then whenever she showed up, it was a good twist, because I thought there was no way anyone could survive that. That said, I do like, I care about the character so much that like I was really sad that she died, and I was also like really sad for the main character too. And I was like, oh, that's really, really tragic. And whenever she showed up, there is a happy feeling that I get still, of like, oh, he gets to be happy, she gets to live. This is cool. There is that little stinger, like you were mentioning. She's got something on her neck that looks like a Godzilla spine, which might just be like kind of a reference to like the radiation sickness that the atomic bomb left. It could be she's mutating. Maybe she'll be 150 feet tall and wrestle Godzilla in the next one if they want to go goofy with it. The director of this did a couple like 4D ride experiences with Godzilla a couple years before he got this job. And in one of them, Godzilla fights King Ghidorah. So it would be pretty cool if he does Ghidorah for the next one. I would also like to see maybe a lesser seen monster like Anguirus or something. But the design for Godzilla is practically ripped straight from that ride. He's kind of got a little bit more scars on him in this than the ride, but that's probably just due to budget. They can add more finer details than a ride possibly could. I actually really like this design for Godzilla. Every time there's a new version of the character, immediately it's like, okay, what's it gonna look like, and is it gonna look any good?
Yeah, I thought the one in the Matthew Broderick version, which was in the 1990s.
Yeah,
I hated the way that character looked.
Yeah, and even acted, it's just not Godzilla. The fan base called it Gino for a while, which is Godzilla in name only. And then Toho bought the rights to that design and changed it to just Zilla because they were like, it took the god out of Zilla. And then they have him fight actual Godzilla in Godzilla Final Wars, which is just like a fever dream. That I love that movie, but it's also not necessarily that good. But yeah, this is one of my more favorite designs. It's a very basic Godzilla. Like it's to me the like default Godzilla in my brain whenever I think of it is the like Heisei 90s era Godzilla from Japan, where he fights King Ghidorah. There's like time traveling robots and stuff. He fights Space Godzilla. That design is like the default in my brain, and this is like the closest to that since probably like the King of the Monsters design, which might be my favorite. Is the King
like
of the Monsters?
Too, yeah.
I like how big he is. He's this big hulking thing. And then in Godzilla versus Kong, you get to see him do some destruction on cities, which I thought was cool. In the new one, he gets a new design where he's like pink.
Yeah, I've seen the pink spines or whatever.
Yeah, he's pink and skinny.
Like people put memes together where they contrast the color. You know, here's a blue one, here's a pink one. You know, different Godzilla colors.
Which at first we had like toy leaks of that design, and the toys looked really bad. And I was not excited because it was they're changing my baby basically. My one of my favorite designs of the character. But in the movie, it grew on me. I actually think it's a pretty cool design. I kind of like. I think. Oh, what's his name? Adam Wingard is the director of that one. I kind of agree with his aesthetic choices of let's try to make everything look like a metal album cover. It's interesting getting these two polar opposite Godzilla movies like back to back, where you have one that is very much grounded about characters and like really has some heavy themes to it about like survivor's guilt and everything. And then you have Godzilla Cross Kong, where it's just like, we're going to play volleyball with the villain, like with his body, which is very Showa era. Like that's the cool thing about the character is that you can have that dichotomy. And part of the like marketing for these two movies has been both directors like interviewing each other in Japan and in America, and talking about their different interpretations of the character and why that might be. And like the director Yamazaki for this for Minus One, he was talking about that making it so serious kind of feels like a response to how the American ones have been a little more lighthearted. And it's like, okay, we don't need to go lighthearted. That's already happening overseas. We can go a little darker. So that would be that's cool. I like how supportive the two sides seem to be of each other or with each other. And yeah, I'm gonna watch whatever Godzilla thing comes out. Like I say that I'm excited, but it's like obviously it's one of the few franchises left where it's like I'm an utter fanboy and will probably end up liking it to some degree, even if it's not that good.
All right. All right. Well, appreciate if your opinions on Godzilla Minus One. If you're out there and you haven't seen it, sorry, you really should go see it. And I don't know when it's going to be streaming or when it might be available. Just keep checking, I guess. It used to be that like 5 months to the day when it'd be out in the theaters is when they'd start releasing DVDs, So you're just like, okay, I got to wait 5 months and I can go buy the DVD. But nobody has DVD players anymore, right? And your computers don't have CD drives. And it's like, okay, so now you have to stream it. And I don't even know if there's some kind of formula where you're like, well, how long is it going to be before I can get it streamed? Because they've been doing these things where they'll stream things and release them in the theaters at the same time. Or, they release it and then you don't know when it's ever going to stream. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be on Hulu or Prime or Netflix or something else, Shudder, And then, can you see it for free on Prime, but for $2.99 on, some other service on Peacock or whatever. So this seems to get much more complicated on where you can see it. Can you get it for free? Do you have to pay to watch it? So, I mean, keep your eyes out. If I see anything, I can post it in a comment. But any final thoughts?
Well, to add what you were just saying about like the release, I feel I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that similar to why it was pulled from theaters, the holdup on releasing it on home video is also to do with the fact that there's a new Godzilla movie in theaters right now. Legendary and Warner Brothers, there's some type of licensing agreement. So there's apparently a good chance we don't see this hit anywhere outside of like your piracy sites until like 2025, which would be that'd be a little sad. I would like to see it sooner than that. I really hope it doesn't get trapped on like Amazon Prime, because I collect Blu-rays and DVDs and 4K discs and stuff. So I have every Godzilla movie. Even I imported some suspicious, possibly Chinese bootlegs of the anime trilogy, which again I don't like, but I had all the other Godzilla movies. I need to have those three. And so now with this, it's like, yeah, it's the one that I don't have. I would love to be able to put it on my shelf next to the rest. But yeah, no, just final thoughts is it's great. If you get the chance to see it, absolutely watch it. If you're not usually a fan of these movies, still try to give it a shot. I've seen a lot of people who haven't ever seen a Godzilla movie, and they just have a lot of like presumptions of what Godzilla movies are, and they go to see this and they were just blown away. It's just a great movie. Like, ignoring all of my fanboyisms, it's just really good. And I'm happy to see it get such great response and success.
Yeah, I mean, for a movie that has subtitles, which I don't normally expect to do so well in the theaters, but it did really great, and so I was pleasantly surprised. So definitely go out and see Godzilla Minus One if you have the opportunity. Keep your eye open for where it might be streaming. And thank you for your time, Dillon. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you for having me on.
Remember, everyone, to hit like and subscribe or that little bell notification so you know when I put up more videos, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.